Husband just had a birthday the other day.
The growing old together, huh?
Oh, yes. He's aging much better than me. All his shit is still in one place. Mine is thinking a little.
Succumbing to the wiles of gravity. Is that what you're saying? little shagginess.
Oh, those grotesque mortal bodies, as
I know.
Stuart Armstrong would say. We should detest.
Yeah. Oh, what about the whole body as a temple business anyway, huh?
Well, contradictions are fun, like you said.
Oh, well. All right. Welcome to another conversation with the Apostate Sisters. I'm Patti, and I'm here with my sister Nancy. We grew up in a doomsday cult called the Worldwide Church of God. We are also nerdy about history and culture, but we're critical of religion, so get ready to get mad or to nod your head in agreement as we talk about today's topic of birthday celebrations.
Yay!
It's very timely because we both have birthdays over the winter here.
Yes. And now we can celebrate them however we choose. Something we did not have as children.
Exactly. Generally, in the Worldwide Church of God, which we were in growing up, celebrating one's own birthday was kind of a big no-no. Yeah?
A huge no-no. It was right up there, I think, with Christmas, but it was far less talked about than Christmas. And we just had that episode recently on Christmas, and the two kind of coincide a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, they're usually what, for the average American kid, birthday and Christmas are like the two best days of the year. We didn't have either of them.
Unless your birthday falls around Christmas, and then you kind of get short end of the stick, don't you? I know a few people like that, but hopefully they get twice as many presents. Who knows?
Yeah, hopefully. Well, what were your memories? Like, I know we didn't do birthdays, but what do you remember generally growing up about birthdays?
Well, nothing really, because we didn't celebrate them. I mean, we definitely didn't have these modern traditions like getting cake, blowing out candles, and making a wish. There's only one instance where I remember getting some gift close to my birthday. I don't think it was actually on it, but Mom got me like an old Mariah Carey cassette tape that I really wanted from. It was from a garage sale. It didn't feel like a birthday gift, but again, the timing was pretty close to my birthday, but that's the most of it. It was very rare that we ever got presents since they didn't do Christmas or birthdays. There may have been times during the Feast of Tabernacles, which they did celebrate, where we may have gotten maybe one present. I don't know if you remember that.
I always thought of the Feast of Tabernacles as like our version of Christmas, because we did get presents and significant quantities of them, not to the point of like what Christmas was for Silicon Valley kids in the 80s, but like, maybe 3 or 4 things a piece. More significant than any other time in our year. But it wasn't like they were prepared and wrapped. It was like we went shopping for them.
In later years, it was pretty obvious, at least to me, that our parents didn't celebrate birthdays for the same reason they didn't celebrate Christmas, pagan origin, which we'll get into. After they moved away to South Carolina, I was 17. There was definitely some acknowledgement that birthdays weren't celebrated, but they never really stated why. And I guess I had never made the connection. I tried to stay in touch with them all these years. They don't call us. They don't call me. They don't call you. Definitely never to chat. If there's something significant like a health issue with Mom or something, Dad might call. But other than that, it was really
only days later, though.
Yeah, or weeks later. Jesus. I did used to call them on occasion, year to year, wishing them happy birthday. And they made it clear that they weren't celebrating. And I don't know why I felt a little flabbergasted by that, or why I didn't realize that they didn't celebrate birthdays, or maybe I just never made the connection. They also never call us on our
Aw.
birthdays. That's not something they ever did.
Well, this is making me wonder if, like, I heard all of the religious reasons why we didn't do birthdays. And so even though it still sucked, I had like this other thought in my head of
Mm.
why we didn't. And it makes me sad to think of little you just literally never getting celebrated and never knowing why other kids got celebrated and you didn't.
Well,
It
same.
wasn't, you did, if you didn't know it was because you were God's chosen, I mean, that makes it harder, right?
But yes, we were elevated as God's supposed chosen ones. And so did we feel some sort of elevation off that? I mean, did you? I don't even know that I thought about it.
I mean, I think in moments where I was like, well, why don't I get to do this? Or why don't I get to do that thing that everyone else does?
Mhm.
That would be the thing that would come to mind. So I know I was aware of it and had been told it. And so it was like, it kind of mollified my feelings about it, but who knows what, I mean, you don't know how to believe true things if you've only ever been told bullshit.
Very well
So.
put, Pat. So what was it like for you growing up? I said I don't really have any memories whatsoever, but you seem to remember a lot more as far as friends of yours that would be celebrating it. So what was your experience like?
During the elementary years, I would get invited to friends' birthday parties all the time. I mean, there was a lot of times where, a kid would just have invitations for everyone in the class. Or if it wasn't everyone, it was a few, right? And so I'd get handed these adorable invitations. And I mean, I just idolized this idea of having a birthday party because it sounded so fun. I mean, there's treats and you get presents. Like presents was such a big deal to a kid. But so
Mhm.
I'd get these invitations and have to say no. And because we were good at RSVPing when you were supposed to, that meant yeses and nos. So I'd always have to call and say I couldn't go. And I probably threw in something about I couldn't go because I'm not allowed to by my religion.
Embarrassing, absolutely embarrassing. And I love how you use the word idolized in there, Pat, since that's what our church had pushed back on, is
I know.
idolatry and idolizing things.
Well, it just sounded so fun. I mean, what kid wouldn't want to go to a birthday party, right? So I mean, here I had to decline them, which whatever, did it change my, I mean, I don't know how to contextualize it, right? Like in the end, is it a big deal for my survival? Well, no, but I think it did affect me, because eventually my friends realized what the answer was going to be and they understood, because I wasn't quiet about the fact that my religion prohibited all these things. So some eventually just didn't bother inviting me, and others were like, well, here's an invite, but I know you can't come. I just don't want you to
Oh,
feel left out.
it's like the
Ah,
pity invite.
so sad. Being included is so important to
Yes.
a kid's development,
Yep.
right? Especially if that kid's already feeling singled out.
And we were
So
singled out in a lot of different ways, not only
exactly.
birthdays, the food restrictions in the church we were raised in, as well as Christmas and other things, just all sorts of things that just made us feel like outsiders, even to this day.
Right. Well, and I mean, most of those birthday parties would have been on Saturdays also, which was like a double problematic for us getting to go. And
Oof, oof.
so I mean, I would say that that moratorium on birthday celebrations at all, mine or others, it it definitely added to my sense of being an outsider in the sense that I somehow either wasn't good enough or was too good because of that elect stuff to
Weird.
be part of like the everybody, the everybody around me that did get to be celebrated on their birthday. And I think that little fact is a big deal too. Like, shouldn't a kid feel special even just one fucking day? Like, come on. I like kind of cry for us poor little kiddos and all the other kiddos who
I know.
don't feel special from day to day.
I know.
Yeah. So I don't know. Somebody could make a case for it not being a big deal, but it was a big deal to little me.
Maybe it was even just a reason for to ensure that everyone got celebrated, because everyone has a birthday, right?
Well, right. Yeah, one day. Well, and I mean, if you think back to a couple hundred years ago, it was, it was a good 30 to 40% of people didn't make it past their fifth birthday. So having a birthday was a big damn deal because, oh my God, you didn't die of dysentery in the last 365 days. Right? Come on.
But isn't another year of life something to celebrate anyway? I mean, come on, you've made it another year. We should
But we're
find out.
supposed to hate this life.
I know. We're supposed to hate our mortal bodies, everything about us. We're sinful, and we're prideful if we celebrate birthdays, right?
Oh, so sad. Right. I mean, I do think that was the idea that by celebrating your birthday, you were elevating yourself or trying to draw attention to yourself,
Right.
which of course also wasn't okay. But I guess the other thing I remember from school stuff and birthdays in particular was that it was really important to bring a treat in for your class on your birthday.
Oh, I do remember
Yeah.
that.
Yes. Right. I mean, it was a good day when
Mhm.
Michael, whoever had a birthday, because you got cupcakes. And it was the 80s. So we hadn't decided that all food at schools has to be prepackaged. So people would bring in homemade treats. So it was even better.
Wait, did we? I don't remember doing anything like that. Or did we used to?
Oh, we didn't do it. Oh,
Okay.
no. See, that was the problem. It was like a social thing to bring in treats to give out to your class on your birthday. And I always thought it was great, because here you are giving a gift to others on your birthday. And I know one of the things, or even as a kid, I thought about how Armstrong talked so much about the idea of a get mentality versus a give mentality. And so I even tried to make a case to our parents about it at one point to be like, well, look, it's giving. I know it's my birthday, but then I'd be using my birthday to give. So isn't that good? I did not win. I got told to shut up a lot, not with those words, but I got told to shut up a lot. And then the comment was made, boy, you'd be a good lawyer. Oh, well, okay. I guess I was just being a little too logical for them at the time.
Take that as a huge compliment, Patsy.
I know. But I mean, the whole thing kind of makes me realize why it was always so bad for us to be like proud of ourselves for anything, and that it was rare that we got told good job on stuff, because that would have led us to elevate ourselves instead of humbling ourselves. Right? Like, honestly, how did we make it this far and not completely disbelieve in ourselves up to this point? That was the early years, right? But I believe by age 10, something had kind of shifted in the church. Now, I don't know. Armstrong would have been dead because he died in 86. So it would have been Joseph Tkach. So that could be why. I do think things started shifting when he took over.
Oh,
so yeah, so it could be that when Tkach was pastor general, or it might have just been that we got a new local pastor that had slightly softer notions around birthdays. But at age 10, our parents were okay with me doing a little bit of a birthday thing that year. I mean, I was also kind of harping on them because I was like, but I'm turning 10, it's double digits, which was important to me. God, I must have been such a nerd as a kid. But what they did let me do was to have 4 or 5 friends over, and we had dinner, and I think we had dessert. It wasn't a cake, and it didn't have candles. Candles definitely still seemed like the bad parts that they were just going to cling on to make sure they would hate something about it. But I don't think there was presents involved. But anyway, who knows? Who knows? I don't remember that exactly.
When you say the age, that actually triggers something that stands out. When I was 8 years old, I remember going to the grocery store. What was the name of that? Spruce Ritz or something? Yeah, Spruce Ritz or Alpha Beta, one of those two. The place is shut down now, but I remember going to the checkout with Dad. It was my 8th birthday. And again, I don't remember anything happening for birthdays, but I saw a pink glazed donut up there by the register. And I asked him for it. I said, Dad, it's my 8th birthday. Can I have a pink donut? They're like, nope, nope. Just no explanation, whatever. I was like, I came up with this clever little thing. I was like, Dad, but I'm 8, which means I can say the cool phrase, hey, today I ate a pink donut. Hee hee hee. A silly little story, but I remember that. That's little. All I wanted was a pink donut on my birthday when I turned 8, but I got nothing, and that's what I wanted.
And you know what? He would have bought you a donut on another day.
Yes. Why couldn't he just give me the pink fucking donut?
He would have, like, he took you on his morning, like Sunday morning walks sometimes to get the paper, and he would buy you a donut. I remember that.
Really?
Yeah.
But he just couldn't on this particular day because it was my birthday? I don't know.
Maybe.
He thought that was
sinful. I don't know. Somewhere along the way, I heard if you can say yes to a child, say yes. And obviously, you can't say yes to everything, or even if you have the money to say yes to everything, it may not be advisable. But I've really thought about that and taken that idea into my parenting, because I do feel like we were told no for the sole purpose of making sure we didn't find joy.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I say yes to my children. Like, will I go get them a donut every day? No, of course not. But if we're at the store, yeah.
But if you're going to say no to your children, at least give them an explanation of why, so that we understand why we can't have something.
True. Right. Even if it's a money thing, it can be like, oh, honey, we've made a budget that it has it laid out differently, or we've decided to spend our excess on something else this month, or we're saving for something. Right. Like,
teach them how money works then.
Exactly. Yep. And so I think many parents don't give their kids enough credit for what they could understand and rationalize if you are honest with them.
Right.
Yeah.
You're a rock star at that, Pets. I don't have kids of my own, but you have 2 amazing girls that have a mother that is so understanding and so patient and ensures they know the answers to all their questions, at least to the best of your ability. Or it teaches them, how to think, not what to think. Boom.
And I can also say, I don't know if I don't know. I don't need to say magic.
Correct. You don't need to have an answer for everything. It's okay saying you don't know, and maybe we'll have the answer later and we'll figure it out. That's okay.
Yeah. Wow. It's a lot. I wanted to be sure to share this. My experience of finally getting that birthday party kind of turned out different from one of our listeners who also grew up in the Worldwide Church of God. So Jason was kind enough to share his story with us about what birthdays was like in the Worldwide Church of God for him.
Yeah.
He says, my first birthday that was actually celebrated by my family, I turned 13. White cake with raspberry filling and candles. I had 2 pieces and puked it all up off the back deck.
Thanks for your story, Jason. We appreciate it.
Oh, but then we had a little conversation, and he went on to say this. It's a pretty vivid memory for sure, especially when we weren't raised on anything sugary. Everything was sweetened with honey. I thought no birthdays was crap, even when I was a kid.
Oh, so the sugary
I definitely thought it was crap when I was a kid too. But isn't that interesting that he's mentioning everything being sweetened with honey and not having sugary stuff? So that goes back to our food episode, where I remember realizing that for a long time, I thought sugary things were against our religion, at least sugary cereals.
Right.
So there must have been some faction or contingency within the church, like making a big deal about health food at some point anyway, unless that's just like his family happened to be into that and so did ours.
Seems like there has to be a connection there somewhere though.
Yeah, right. But I don't actually ever remember seeing, Herbert W. Armstrong booklets about eating healthy food that I recall. So
right.
Who knows?
That seems far too much of a coincidence, unless that was just something in the 80s where people were on a health kick for a while in general.
That could be. When we had the potlucks at church, what was it? Once a month they had potlucks. favorite
Yeah.
day, by the way.
Food.
They always had cake out for that. So
Yeah.
they clearly weren't totally against all of that as
Yeah.
a full organization.
Again, there were a lot of members of that church that were extremely lax too, which seems like such an oxymoron. Our parents are so extreme in it. I just thought everyone else was too, but you never know. I mean, my college professor, Dan Creed, at least he was in the United Church of God. He's the one that wrote the book about the former governor of Minnesota, Jesse Ventura. He was his assistant or something. But yeah, it was very interesting to see a professor of mine in college was actually in the same religion as I was raised in, but he celebrated birthdays no problem. I didn't
That is so weird.
dig
Okay,
into it more than that,
I've
but
come across this idea too. I did find one person who went through a stint last year making a whole bunch of TikToks exposing some of the history of the Worldwide Church of God, how, the Worldwide Church of God really wasn't just one thing, because each area would kind of develop their own things that really stood out about what they cared about socially for doing and not doing to be appropriate.
like Christianity in general and
Oh
all
yeah, like how all religion is. Yeah.
hundreds,
Yeah,
thousands of
exactly.
different churches here. Yeah, extended to all religions. Correct. Yep.
Yeah. Well, so I wanted to talk a little bit more about gifts as a whole thing, since it's so prevalent in birthdays. It just really stands out to me, gifting in general, because since we didn't do Christmas and we didn't do birthdays, like when I think back, maybe I've said this in another episode, but I actually cannot remember getting a wrapped present from our parents ever.
Same. I don't remember either.
Right.
Nope.
Now there's kids who never got a present and they also get like beaten and stuff. And so I'm not like saying, oh my God, poor me. But I think it's worth talking about because given the joy that I've had over the years wrapping something for my children, even if it's like fucking socks or something, I just can't imagine what kind of fucked up conditioning has to be done to a person to convince them that it's okay to never, ever take a goddamn minute to wrap a present in pretty paper or even newspaper to see their children's eyes light up with delight. Really? I mean, it's almost like our delight was an anathema to the godliness that our parents tried to instill in us. It's like, I find myself wondering, and this is where you can't trust your thoughts after an upbringing like this, is were they looking at us in the times where we were giggling and playing with some kind of disgust? Like, I don't think so. And I'd like to think that's not true. But honestly, when it seems like so much was done to prevent us from achieving the joy we saw all around us, it's kind of hard to tell.
How gross is that? Well, I don't remember a lot of laughing and joy growing up. I guess we had to make our own, playtime. Yeah, us playing as kids, we found ways to
Oh, yeah.
be happy, but we were usually chastised and punished for a lot of that. I don't even remember what for, but yeah. No, that's exactly how it was, Pats. Yeah. Well said, Pats. Real good.
I mean, it makes me wonder about what each of our parents experienced growing up,
Well, yeah, their mindset. I mean, we really should delve into who they are as people because, as far as who they are, I don't know who they are. I know
Right.
who the Bible tells them they are, but do they have personalities all their own? What drove them to feel the need to be a part of this? And again, this might take quite a few episodes to figure out, and we may never figure it out, but all we can do is, heal ourselves and be like, we never wanted to be a part of this. So we can
Yeah.
start fresh. We can start fresh. But
Yep.
yeah, speaking of which, Patty, maybe we should delve into the history side of it, which I definitely like to do. And I looked up some publications in the HWA library online, which is, of course, the Herbert W. Armstrong Library. All kinds of publications and books and that are still in existence out here, but at least we can reference back to them.
Can I just tell you how much I appreciate your nerdiness around history and the details of all of this?
Yes, well, I enjoy it. And I think I know the reason behind it because our parents were really not into it. But we'll cover that. So here's what I found online. The title of this publication, it was from 1955. It was called The Good News. It was a publication, so not one of his plain truth booklets. It was called Should Christians Celebrate Birthdays? And there may be more out there, but this is the one that kind of popped out to me. Again, 1959, and there's all kinds of, newer versions out there. According to this, there were 2 specific passages in the Bible that actually mention birthdays by name. One is from Genesis, chapter 40, verse 20 through 23. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but in a gist, on the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, of course, it's talking about the Egyptian Pharaoh, he made a feast for all his servants. Long story short, he ended up hanging his chief baker. Yeah, okay, that's the first reference to birthdays. The next one is from Matthew 14, 6 through 7. And it talks about the birthday celebration of King Herod, where John the Baptist is hung. There's also apparently some passages out there where Job's sons may have celebrated their birth dates, and their father Job actually cursed his own birth date. Again, not going to get into the details, but it seems like there's a little bit of mention in here. But due to all this, yeah.
So if we were deciding that we were going to hang someone to celebrate our birthday, well, all right, I could see not doing that. I would prohibit that type of celebration also.
But again, Armstrong always liked to take the terrible bits of everything he found throughout history and to fit into his narrative. He was really good at that. So yeah, Herbert W. Armstrong, he stressed that birthdays had very little importance in God's eyes. I personally feel like Armstrong must have been such a loser, and he had no friends, he had no fun, and then he didn't want anyone else to have any fun either. So he used his God as a way to kind of guilt the masses. Have you met people like this? People that they just don't have any fun in their lives. And if they see other people having fun, like, it makes them angry. It makes them resentful. They don't want anyone else to have fun. It's like the Karens of the world. You see someone out hanging out having fun. You can't be on that sidewalk. Me. I'm going to call the cops on you. That sort of shit. But that's the kind of person that I think he was. But I digress. But yeah, Armstrong always went back to the Roman, aka pagan, system of calculating time. And he would always state how Satan, the deceiver, controls the calendar. Hence, we shouldn't even pay attention to dates. They weren't important except for God's holy calendar, which we can actually talk about in a whole nother topic. He has his own specific calendar. He doesn't like using apparently the Gregorian one because it's of Roman origin. So
really?
Well, right.
I was going to say, doesn't he follow Roman stuff too? Because he's all about the patriarchal nonsense that Rome essentially set up. Yes, I realize that the Hebrews were a patriarchal society also, but it was the Romans that codified that shit.
But he believes Satan is the one that controls the calendar. Oh, it's getting juicy, huh?
That's Satan.
I know. If Armstrong didn't want us to do something, which he used the God excuse from the Bible, he just blamed it on Satan. Well, Satan is clearly deceiving here. So.
Right. Yes. Oh, that's so true. Anything they didn't like, oh, that's Satan causing that problem.
I know.
Oh, it's so infuriating.
So Armstrong believed that we should not do the things of this world because we are going to come out of this world. And he also stated from the moment of conception and the birth of this mortal life, They're of little importance compared to our new birth, quote unquote, into God's kingdom. So he went on to say Satan uses birthdays as a way to cover up the emphasis on our spiritual birthdays when we receive the Holy Spirit and are free of our earthly bodies. Free.
No way.
We can get the fuck out of these horrifying, grotesque, earthly bodies and get into our spiritual one. I'm not kidding you. This is what it says. He also states, no scripture anywhere commands us to observe any dates other than God's Sabbath and his holy days, which the Sabbath we already covered, holy days we'll go through later. To celebrate birthdays is to add to God's law. And whoever does that will be added to the lake of fire. Boom!
Oh my God.
Boom!
It's so gross. Okay. So he's already wrong, obviously. The whole moment of conception thing. The Bible's pretty clear that life begins at the moment of first breath. That life begins at breath intake and ends at the exhale of the last one. Yep.
Well, that sounds like another topic for another day as far as bodily autonomy and so.
Yeah.
Here's another quote from that. It says, this is gross, Pats. Oh, well, what isn't in his books? It says, ought we not look back year by year with a feeling of regret rather than pride? We have not learned the wisdom or acquired the knowledge and understanding that we might. If only we had applied ourselves more diligently. If we had only begun earlier in life to fear God, to keep his commandments, to recognize human nature for what it is, then our years could be a thing to look back over with joy and with the right kind of pride. Ugh.
Wow.
Your thoughts? Isn't that gross?
It explains a lot. It explains why I have trouble saying anything good about myself or believing that I'm good enough at something.
Right?
Because I was not allowed to acknowledge that in any way.
It's just wasting your life away. I mean, no wonder our parents were so miserable and they acted like they hated the world, including themselves, because they were taught that. I remember Dad telling me, I tried to show him this, this massive history timeline that I've been working on for years. I really wanted to show it to him. And one time when I had gone to South Carolina, I brought it up. I'm like, Dad, you're really into history, right? I want to show this to you. It's really cool. It's like goes all throughout the years with all the details of just kind of, some major things that have happened throughout our history. And like, nope, I don't want to see it. Nope, not interested. And he just had this look of disgust and hatred. But now I feel like I understand that because Armstrong taught him how evil it is to do things like track important dates. And maybe that's where my fascination history came from, because our parents had dismissed it so much, but I wanted that knowledge. I needed to know the history of us before I could move forward into our future.
Right. Well, I feel the same way. Yeah, I kind of like to fly high overhead of topics and like get the lay of the whole area before I dive down and understand deeper information.
Right.
Like I need to understand how things connect throughout time and space.
Well, I think both of us just never really accepted the quote unquote way things ought to be or should be, because we needed the why behind the why, which is evident here, and why we were attracted to understanding where things come from. And isn't it fascinating? I love history. But yeah, speaking of like the actual history of birthdays, yeah, I'm a nerd. I'll accept that. Geek. Yep. Well, yeah, nerdy, not geeky. My husband's a geek. Our husbands are IT geeks. Yes.
Most definitely.
We'll take it. We'll take it. All right. So what I found, one of the earliest examples of birthdays being celebrated does come ding, ding, ding out of ancient Egypt yet again, which actually this kind of coincides with what it mentions in the Bible, an Egyptian pharaoh. So this would have been around 3000 BCE, where big celebrations took place that were synonymous with the coronation dates of the pharaohs. And that symbolized the birth of the pharaoh as a god. Okay, that kind of relates to the whole, like, not birth of our mortal life, but the birth of the spiritual life bit. Yeah.
Yeah. It's also kind of like evangelical born again movements.
Exactly. Yes. Like born again. Like, what? We're born once. Okay. We're born again. That's another topic. But anyway, this Egyptian tradition, of course, was also used by the ancient Greeks since they were in Egypt. They celebrated their gods by offering these moon-shaped cakes to the lunar goddess Artemis. And they were the ones that added lit candles to make the cakes look like they were glowing, like the moon.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, isn't that? Just like that. And then birthdays were originally considered pagan rituals by the early Christians until the Roman Catholic Church, of course, created Christmas, celebrating the birth of Jesus around the 4th century, which we discussed in our Christmas podcast. And then by medieval times, the nobles started to celebrate their birthdays while the peasants celebrated their quote unquote saints' day. So the saint that they were actually named after. Romans were supposedly the first to begin birthday celebrations for secular citizens, but of course only for the men back then. Women didn't have birthday celebrations until the 12th century. The Romans also had public holidays relating to birthdays of like famous citizens that entailed the practice of lots of gift giving. So there you go. The two kind of come together with full gifts and then the cake and the lighting the candles. But then the practice of blowing out candles and then making the wish at modern birthday parties, that may have actually originated in the late 18th century in Germany with, I'm going to butcher the name, but Kinderfeast? Yeah.
Kinderfest.
Yeah.
I'm making it up, but it sounds fun, right?
All right. In German, that event actually means kids event, which doesn't that kind of sound like kindergarten? I must have come in from that German word.
Oh yeah. Kindergarten is definitely like where you grow the children. Or you grow the kindergarten. Yeah, it literally was. Child garden, yes.
Okay. Languages are cool. They're fun.
I know.
And only wealthy families at this point were said to have done this due to the high cost of ingredients to make the cakes. But the Industrial Revolution and then the installation of like conveyor belts at bakeries, that's when all of a sudden, like your normal average person was able to celebrate birthdays with the cake. How cool is that, huh?
That is cool. And here we are drowning in our own sugary abundance, but that's okay.
It's no good though.
Oh, it's so sad though. I can have cake now, and now I'm gluten-free, so I can't.
I've never been big on cake either, but yeah, I kind of go the healthy route too. So kudos to Mom. She always did say we would thank her someday for doing all these healthy things for us. I'm like, so that I do appreciate, but a little context with it would have been nice.
I would like to eat healthy for caring about my body's sake and not because I was concerned about burning in a lake of fire, though.
Good call, Paz. Good call.
Yeah. You know.
Control through fear.
Ugh, control through fear. Fuck that. Ugh. I don't know. I guess going through all of this, it just made me think how those seemingly tiny things, maybe were just part of everyday experience to most kids, but to us, it was the thing we didn't get to do. And in a way, it like sucked the magic out.
Right.
Yes, we were more rational in some ways, but then on the flip side, we were all the way with our God belief. Mm-hmm. So I don't know.
Parents, not us.
What's that?
Our parents, not us.
Yeah, well, true. But I mean, I believed it because what else choice did I have? It was the only thing presented to me as truth. And so I did believe it. How could I not? I guess the candle thing always stood out to me just because there was so much emphasis as a kid being put on the blowing out of candles and making that wish, and I know it was prohibited because it was a pagan thing. And I
Right.
would say now, like, candles figure rather prominently into witchcraft spells, even meditation and in setting intentions and things like that. So that would
Right.
have all been pretty bad according to them. But
Mhm.
yeah. So I guess the big thought that I had about all of this was more around and I've alluded to it, but the psychological aspects, like how this affects kids who can see things going on in the world and yet have those things prohibited to them.
Mhm.
So, because the way I see it is that skipping birthdays was something that, while yes, it is just like every other day, also not having it acknowledged went a really long way, a shockingly long way, to making us not feel special or not deserving. And the sad part is, I think that's what they intended. Right? Because how dare I elevate or promote myself when only God deserves the attention? And that was how it was put to me time and time again. But what are the psychological impacts of ignoring those birthdays and generally telling kids that they're inherently sinful, right? So I wanted to spend a little time looking into that because I care a lot about psychology of kids, because we are way more fragile, I think, than we realize. And we react from our trauma for most of our life if we don't understand what went into the making of us. If a child is repeatedly made to believe that they're
Mhm.
not special, or they're problematic as a human in general, or they're troublesome, or they're evil even, right? Like a sinner, right?
Exactly.
Those effects can be significant. Yeah, a
What
kid
better
keeps
way to get control over someone early on in life, indoctrinate their mind, so that make them little good Christian soldiers for God. And this is their afterlife. This is their view of afterlife. You're just supposed to be God's servant in the afterlife.
Who wants that?
I
Like,
well,
wipe my name from history instead. I would not serve
right.
that fucker. Like,
Yeah.
oh my
Well,
God, what?
that's the reasoning though. That's their way of getting control, Pats. You make someone not feel special, and then you're just another soldier with orders being barked to. So you'll do whatever you're told. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Get them
Yeah.
early, Pats. Get them early. Yep.
Well, so the ways that we can talk about those things now, it's not like, oh, toughen up, like we maybe used to say.
Right.
It's toughen up and obey. We're actually looking at things like low self-esteem,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
You're going to feel inadequate if you're literally being told that you're garbage.
Yeah.
Duh. Um, and that's going to include anxiety and depression. I mean, think about anxiety over hell. I know a lot of atheists who have deconstructed still struggle with their anxiety over what the fear that was put into them around hell, and depression. If you think, oh, I'm a sinner and I can never get better, and here maybe there's a thing that you're perceiving as a sin that you're doing and you just can't seem to do better at that, well, you're going to get depressed, because guess what? You know that you're headed for a lake of fire, and if you can't convince yourself that that's not going to happen, I'm pretty sure that's going to put a negative little filter on what you're seeing in your everyday life here.
Even the most obedient people out there that try to follow the Bible to a T, like our parents, I'm sure have so much guilt and anxiety and depression, but it's almost like they welcome it. Like it's supposed to be there.
It's yes, they hold it like it's a precious little thing, like
Mm-hmm.
a
Like it's good. Like it's
like
good.
a little rock in their shoe reminding them of something, or I don't know. But I mean, think about that. A fear-based religious teaching like hell. Oh my God. You're just living in that, thinking that you have to do things just so and please the right people in order to not have hell happen to you. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, oh my gosh. Now, I know Worldwide Church of God didn't believe in hell in the most standard evangelical way, but they talked about the lake of fire, which to me was analogous as far as like having a a situation where you're being eternally or long-term burned.
Well, hell and doomsday is a topic that we can definitely cover in another podcast as well, because I think there's enough information there that we can go over and be like, well, what is everyone's interpretation? I think for our parents, just to specify, I think it was just that the rest of the people get burned up. Is that correct, Pat? And everyone else goes to heaven, God's chosen?
I don't even know. I think in the Worldwide Church of God scenario, the chosen would stay on earth with Jesus as he ruled for 1,000 years, and then Satan would be released again or something. I don't even know. They had a whole story they put together based on things in like Daniel and Revelation and stuff, but that'll be a whole other thing too. Apocalypse.
Again, yeah. The apocalypse of it. Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, these next two impacts that can happen to the psychology of kiddos are trust issues and difficulty forming relationships.
Word.
Right. So what we're talking about with this is kind of like our ability to connect with others, right? So our attachments to others. So if you've been raised in a situation where you've got this really negative view of the world, and you've personally been labeled as troublesome or sinful or whatever, you're going to start to believe that you're inherently flawed and unlovable. And so at that point, how do you reach out and try to make friends, right? Because you're assuming you're not worthy of it, or you're assuming rejection. And so to trust someone to reach out, or even to trust someone to help you. Like if you're a kid in a religious family and you're also getting your ass beat, how much harder is it for that kid then to trust another adult somewhere else to say, help me?
Isolation is the goal, though, Pat. If you don't trust anyone outside of your little sphere, again, that's a great way to control them and make sure the information does not get out there. It stays, and you don't go out and seek help. Right. Man, did we have some fucking revelations when you and I got out into the real world and started seeing it for what it actually is.
Right. Well, and along with how hard it is to make relationships, if you've been so abused, and I will use that word and stand by it, if you've been mentally abused by a religious upbringing, right? Quite often, I think a strong bond or attachment with the parent is lost, and you get a little bit more of like a conflict or avoidant attachment style, to where that ability to really be close to someone and care about them and be vulnerable with them is quite damaged, because you have this notion of how people are going to view you, because that's how your parents viewed you. Even though they should have been closest to you and been able to see the good in you as well. Yeah.
I don't know. Do you remember our parents telling us anything good about ourselves? Because I don't.
Nope.
Any sort of praise, any like, hey, you're really good at it. One thing I did get from Mom once, it was a travel brochure that I had created. I think it was on Canada back in high school, and she just said she loved it so much and that I should keep doing it. Well, guess what, Mother? I am.
I mean, exactly. Look at how important hearing positive feedback from adults and parents it is for a kid.
Yeah,
because they don't know.
One thing stood out, and now, yes, I'm dedicating my life to kind of just traveling the world, learning about the history and cultures. And there's that one compliment that I do remember from Mom, and I think that encouraged me to go for it. If she had been more encouraging in other ways, man, the things I could have accomplished back then without it just struggling the way I am now. Yeah, your list is incredible, Pat. I mean, just all the behavioral and psychological damage that has caused. Right. You don't even think about it until you start talking through it. And I know we've had conversations with other people who grew up in the Worldwide Church of God saying the same thing, like we've almost been repressing our feelings, and now that we're talking about it, we're realizing, oh, we're all kind of on the same page here. Okay, it's making sense.
Totally. I mean, I think you're right. I think feelings in general weren't allowed, not extreme happy ones, we weren't allowed to show the angry ones. Yeah. I mean, okay, so that leads to the next thing on the list, which is behavioral problems and even academic and social struggles, right?
Mhm.
Because if we have so little understanding of our own emotions because they've been told because we've been told that those emotions were just not okay, versus being taught, hey, how important your emotions are to understanding something, and then you can use it as information in how you move forward.
Right.
We were kind of left to just deal with these bad feelings in our bodies, and we had to either shove them down and hide them, to which I would say it gets in our body tissues and literally can cause us to be ill in
Mhm.
life.
Yeah.
Or as a kid, we can act out.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, all those bad kids in school, yeah, those kids are dealing with some shit at home, and
Yeah.
that's how it's coming out.
Mhm.
I mean, we know this, but somehow we still end up thinking, those kids are bad.
The bullshit is overflowing. Yeah. And oftentimes people that are victimized were victimized first, and the cycle just keeps going and going. That's
Yep.
something we can just slash that cycle dead in its tracks and stop it from going. We could actually move forward.
Yeah, we had really deep understanding of the psychological impacts of how we interact with children. And if we all understood it and made the change all at once, it would take one generation to have a totally different world.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't that incredible when we put it in that perspective?
Mm-hmm. But in the meantime, since we, can't make the change wholesale all at once, unfortunately,
I know.
but what we can do is we can keep making sure as much as we can that psychological information is being promoted and upheld in ways that will help us understand how we can heal traumas instead of passing it on to our children.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So much to unravel. Oh my gosh.
So I'm seeing in here, we've got, academic and social struggles, internalized negativity, the risk of abuse and neglect we talked about, because if abuse and neglect is all a child has experienced, they don't even know that they need to say something.
Well,
right?
Internalized negativity is a big one that I still struggle with today, just constantly. Like when I make a mistake, I am so hard on myself, Pat. I don't know what to do with it. Like I am just like turns me to drink sometimes. It's horrible. Just this feeling of like, no, you can make a mistake and it's okay. You learn from it.
We do. We learn the most when things go wrong. We learn the most when things go wrong.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, to that end, that it's not just, okay, so if you're questioning yourself or being afraid of making mistakes and everything, that is going to impair your cognitive development also. Because if you're so afraid of making mistakes, you're not going to try new things. And so therefore, you're not going to make new connections in your brain, put new information in your brain, especially if you're not in a place where you can freely ask questions or use your critical thinking. You're just told dogma to swallow. That's the thought stopping techniques. Right?
That's where the learning ends, because if people think they have all the answers, they stop learning.
Yep. I was told once at the food bank that I work at, I was talking with someone in there, and he was saying his wife and he were looking at going to be missionaries in another country, and he was saying, "Oh, well, if God says to do it, I just have to obey." And in my head, I had to stop myself, but I had another thought, and I was going to say something to the effect of, well, my take on obedience is that that's the point that critical thinking halts.
Yeah.
But I didn't say it. Maybe I should say it more, but I just, it's tough to bring that up with people.
I know it really is. But can I just use the example also, the guy that went to the North Sentinelese Island because he thought that God wanted him to preach to those people out there? By the way, the North Sentinel is off the coast of India. It might even be a territory of it. I'm not sure. but the people there are almost about as primitive as you can get. He went there with a Bible and he ended up speared to death, but yet he was absolutely convinced that he was supposed to go there and preach God's word. Yeah.
Well,
Not really.
wasn't that the one that was also a cannibalistic tribal group?
The North Sentinelese? I'm not sure if they're cannibalistic. They might be. But I
feel
know
like that could have been the urban legend that attached to that story, because I remember when that story hit the news. But yeah, yikes. It's a good story to point out to Christians, to be like, oh, look at this guy. He was trying to do God's will.
But you know what Christians
was it God's will? Oh yeah, they love persecution. They think persecution is just tits because it proves that they're right.
Big tits or little tits?
Hidden tits.
Hidden tits. Always hidden tits. Can't bring those babies out.
Oh my God. Oh, the psychological effects part just has me a little bit distraught. I'm not going to lie.
Well, I don't blame you there. I don't blame you. I think you've gathered it. You've made sense of it a lot more than I have. I think I still have a lot of crap in there. Well, I mean, to unravel.
Because if you think about it in terms of like from the church's side of things, they need people to obey so that they can keep tithe money coming in. And they don't want anybody with enough wherewithal to rock that boat and to potentially take people away with them, right? So they very much know what they're doing, because they're dealing in the currencies of power, authority, and then exploiting it via a belief system.
Yep.
My friend Aurelie likes to say that she believes that power is the only true currency. And I got to say, I feel like I see that played out here. That to them, the understanding of the psychological effects almost didn't matter or doesn't matter, because they're looking at their end goal of keeping the whole group within obedience and keeping, coins dropping into their coffers.
Yeah. Tax-free donated money. Beautiful.
Tax-free. Okay, we're going to have to go into that at some point, because I would love to rip a new asshole to the whole tax-free thing.
Well, that'll be another topic then, Pat. We've got plenty to cover on this podcast. Tax-free donated dollars.
Well, I always feel exhausted after we talk about these things, because it's just so intense and I care so fucking much. But what do we do now, Nancy? Because we're free of all this nonsense and have been for a while. So do you celebrate birthdays? What do you do? Tell me.
Not really. I mean, I have quite a few friends that, insist they get a cake and candles and do up the whole traditional thing. Not my forte. It'd be different maybe if my husband and I had kids, but we don't. Normally, we just travel. And so we were just in Texas. So, we celebrate our birthdays then, since they're both so close. We just travel. Again, every day is kind of like a birthday to us. Traveling's a big one. And
it's another day, another rotation. It's not another trip around the sun, but it is another Earth rotation you've made it through. Why not celebrate every day? My goodness.
I know. But as far as like traditional celebrations go, I'm not that into it. Again, this is my life. I kind of just want to do whatever I want to do. I usually take a trip, but again, it's just another day to me. People wish me happy birthday. Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. Might get together with some friends. We'll have some drinks. I don't need a cake. I definitely don't go out and buy one. I don't need presents. Don't bother to get me anything. I actually prefer to use that celebration as a way to maybe donate my time or money to a good organization. I know you and I have done that before, where one example, on my birthday years ago, you remember you had donated some money to, I think it was Oxfam organization, Oxfam International, and you bought beekeeping practices in Africa. And so that was the way that I got to spend my birthday, was that the knowledge of knowing that people over in Africa were going to have some beekeeping knowledge, or the processes was spent towards that. This year I donated to my friend Jerry Hughes. He runs an AIDS awareness organization out of Nagpur, India, called the House of Hope. he does great things in the world. I enjoy things like that. Much more feel like I'm making a difference.
Apparently that's what I do too, because when you were visiting and it was my birthday, we went together and volunteered at the food bank that I like to volunteer at.
And that was fun. That was enlightening. It was very good.
Totally.
What about for your birthdays?
Yeah, I guess for myself, it's odd because wouldn't you think after the childhood we had that we would just make a big damn deal about our birthdays and go out and do parties and all of that? But I really don't either. And now I do identify as an introvert, so I have really never wanted to have a huge party all focus on me. That feels weird, but I guess I don't know how much of that came from the church and how much of that is who I am.
Right.
But I do appreciate acknowledging my birthday. I like to get to talk to a couple of good friends on my birthday. I like to not cook or do dishes on my birthday. That's my big thing. My family knows that I should not be cooking or doing dishes.
Understandable.
But yeah, I don't demand like huge presents or anything too special, I guess. I don't know. I'm very inconsistent. I'll say that. I think that as far as any traditions, holiday, birthday, whatever, no matter what I do, I'm inconsistent about doing it. And I think honestly, I think that's a little bit ODD, like oppositional defiance disorder. Like if you're telling me I have to do this every year and I have to do this in exactly just this way, I am automatically going to not want to do it like that because I have had enough of following along and obedience training. So now for my children, I'll say it's a different story.
Right.
I'm probably also somewhat inconsistent with our traditions, but we do have some traditions. Like every year on the kids' birthdays, I make them a birthday nest, unless we have something else going on that we can't, like if we're traveling. But I make a birthday nest where we get helium balloons the night before, keep it in the car overnight, and then bring it in the morning, set it up with, little battery candle lights and the presents we've gotten them, because we've always gotten them presents. Now I don't get super fancy wrapping. I have, wrapping that I reuse from other things or bags that are cloth that we can use from year to year because I'm, into the climate and environmentalism type things also. And so gratuitous purchasing and gratuitous waste is not a thing that I appreciate, and I'll still make my choices in accordance with that. But I fucking make my kids feel special.
Yes.
That's important to me. All of the bits and bobs we do around it might change, but I make sure my kids know that we are celebrating them on their birthday.
Yep.
Because we love them and we're happy they're here, and we know that they are a part of this world and this planet, and their life is valuable, and they get to make their life whatever they want it to be. And another year around the sun is good news for us, good news for them.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm getting emotional. Oh.
No, it's beautiful, Pads. It's beautiful. Yes.
So I will always try to make my kids feel special on their birthday, and I don't even need to spend hundreds of dollars to do that. Shockingly.
Right. Yeah. As you were talking, Pats, I remember something from our childhood where we got Mom some sort of present. I don't know if it was for her birthday. Maybe it was Mother's Day. I think it was Mother's Day. I don't remember what it was, but I just remember her opening it up and she started tearing up. Like she just started crying in happiness because I think she lacked so much appreciation in her life and feeling special, which, Worldwide Church of God has done to her. But her humanity came out that day. I saw it.
Oh yeah, she's there. She's just really buried. She's really buried in there.
She's buried, but it was just an incredible moment to see, probably who she actually is in there come out before being clouded by this ideology. It was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, I even think just just when our parents were raised was like a time when emotions weren't cool. And, so it's, I always will say it, they were victims first. So as much as I could be upset and angry and even blame them because it was them that did it to an extent, I know that they were victims first. They were victims of their circumstances growing up. And it was that led them to be vulnerable to Herbert W. Armstrong's bullshit.
And he knew that. And those
yeah.
are the types of people that he targeted, our parents included. Fuck him. On that note, yeah, that was great, Pats.
I think we did it.
How long was this, Pats? Holy shit, it was so good. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this episode of Apostate Sisters. Go have fun celebrating your birthday, whenever it may be, or celebrate whatever you want for whatever reason. All right, and we will see you next time. Bye. Yay.